Hey guys, today's video is going to be my February wrap up. It is March 1st right now. Hopefully I'll get this out by tomorrow. Who knows? Who knows how quickly Amanda can edit this. There I am speaking in the third person. Anyways, I have quite a lot of books, honestly, to talk to you about. I have 9 books here with me, I have 8 physical books, 1 audiobook to talk about with you guys. And without further ado, let's get into the video. I just want to put like a little disclaimer. If you can hear people talking in the background, my grandma has her TV on in the next room. So if you can hear the people on the TV talking through the wall, I'm sorry, she has the TV on. The first book I have to share with you is The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I thrifted this book. If you saw I think it was my huge book haul where I thrifted a bunch of books. I'll link it down below, but if you saw that video, then you know that I thrifted this book. And this book is about a group of friends. Oh my gosh, there's something on the cover. There's like blue ink on the cover. Sorry. That really distracted me. But if you don't know what this book is about, it's about this group of friends. It says the beautiful one, the golden one, the volatile one, the new parents, the quiet one, the city boy, the outsider. Like, those are the stereotypes that they fit into. And on the back it says, one of these friends is a murderer and one won't make it out alive. So it's a murder mystery. Basically, they go on like a little vacation for New Year's and they go to this like lodge in the middle of like the mountain, and they get snowed in, and while they're snowed in, obviously they're stuck there, somebody gets murdered. Somebody in their friend group gets murdered, and it's obviously one of them because nobody else is there on the mountain with them. So this book was pretty good. Towards the end of the book, like the last 100 pages, I just couldn't put it down. I just had to know what happened and who did it and like who died, because you don't know who died until the very, very end. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was pretty good. The only thing was that I kind of guessed who died before we actually found out who died, because it was kind of obvious in my opinion, but I didn't guess who the killer was. So they really pulled a fast one on me. I don't know. But it was pretty good. I would recommend this book if you're looking for a good thriller. And I know Lucy Foley has other books like The Guest List, which I'm really interested in reading that one too. So if you like The Guest List, I'm sure you'll like The Hunting Party. The next book I have to share with you is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. This book is the second book in the like companion series of the Brown sisters. I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown. And if you haven't seen my review about it, I'll leave a link to it down below in the description box. But I loved that book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. The writing, chef's kiss. It was so good. Now this one is about her younger sister, or it's the middle sister there's 3 sisters. This is the middle sister, Danny Brown. This is about Danny Brown, who she has like a friendship with the security guard at the university that she works at and she teaches at. And basically this video goes viral of him rescuing her from like a fire drill. He literally comes out of the building like carrying her in his arms like a princess. So that video goes viral and they start fake dating. Now Danny is more of a no strings attached hookups type of person, while this security guard, I forget what his name is, Zaf. He is a romantic at heart, like, so polar opposites. And they start this fake dating relationship, which soon they realize maybe we both have actual feelings. I don't know. So that's what this book is about. It was so good. I loved it so much. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Just because I did love this book, but it didn't make me swoon over it as much as I swooned over Chloe's story. So that's why I gave Chloe's story a 5 out of 5 and this one a 4 out of 5. But I highly, highly recommend. This is like a high 4, like maybe like a 4.5 out of 5. It was just missing that little oomph, you know? That little oomph that makes it a 5. but I still highly recommend if you're looking for a new romance. The next book, I loved this book so much. It was so good. I cannot rave enough about this book. It is Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. It came out last year, I believe. This is from the library, and the sticker on the spine says September, so I'm assuming it came out September of last year. Sorry about the glare. But basically, this is about Enchanted Jones. She wakes up one day with blood on her hands, and like literal blood on her hands, and she can't remember what happened the night before. She can't remember how she got there or any of the details of what happened. So basically, that's the first chapter. And then we kind of backtrack a bit and get a little bit of her background. So basically, Enchanted is an aspiring singer, and this very famous musician, Corey Fields, takes her under his wing and like mentors her and promises to give her like an EP and sign her to his label, all this stuff. But things start going downhill, and so we have this relationship between Enchanted and Corey Fields. Plot twist, not really a plot twist because you find this out in the very beginning. You remember how Enchanted had blood on her hands? She finds out that it's Corey who is the one who died, and it's Corey's blood that is on her hands, literally. So you have to try and piece together what happens between them first meeting and this timeline of her waking up with blood on her hands and finding out that it's Corey Fields' blood. So it's a really thrilling book. I loved it so much. It was heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, all the words. I don't even know. It was so good. It was so compelling. I loved this book so much. It does say in the beginning there are trigger warnings or content warnings for mentions of sexual abuse, rape, assault, child abuse, kidnapping, and addiction to opioids. So if any of that will trigger you in any way, I do not suggest you read this because it is kind of heavy on those topics. But if those topics don't really scare you, I guess, or deter you from reading a book, then I highly suggest you read this book. It was amazing. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I have to share with you is the one audiobook that I listened to this month. It is called The Switch by Beth O'Leary. I originally picked this book up because I read The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary last year, and I loved it. It was so good. I highly recommend you read that book if you haven't already. It's a really cute romance. The Switch is another romance by Beth O'Leary, and it's basically about these two women. They're both named Eileen, okay? It's a grandma and her granddaughter. They're both named Eileen. They basically switch places. The grandma lives in like the countryside in like a little residential neighborhood with like all of her, I guess, like elderly neighbors. I'm not sure if she lives in like one of those developments made for like elderly people, but all of her neighbors are elderly. And then the other Eileen, the granddaughter, lives in the city, lives in London, and she's living this city life, like working at her law firm, I think, or something like that. Some sort of company. I don't remember. They don't really talk about it that much in detail. They decide to switch. The granddaughter has a 2-month sabbatical from her work, and so for those 2 months they switch. How many times am I going to say that? So the granddaughter goes to the countryside where the grandmother lives, and then the grandma goes to the city where the granddaughter lives. And they decide to live life, try and find themselves amidst this new environment, and along the way romance ensues for both of them. So a little spicy there, but I enjoyed this book. It was pretty interesting. I didn't really have a strong attachment to any of the characters. The granddaughter, I found her story, her romance story, a little more interesting. The grandmother had a really, honestly, a really cool romance story as well, but I preferred the granddaughter's storyline a little better. That was just my personal taste. I give this book a 3 out of 5. If you can tell, I'm not really like gushing about it, but I'm kind of indifferent about it. I don't know. It was good. If you want a fun little romance, it was fun. I did enjoy my time reading this. But it wasn't compelling or anything. It wasn't like my favorite romance. You know what I mean? But it wasn't terrible, so I didn't give it a 2 out of 5 stars. That's why I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So yeah. If that alone leads you to want to read this book, then go right ahead, read this book. It was pretty good. The next book I have to share with you was, quite frankly, a disappointment. It is The Vanishing Star by Maureen Johnson. If you know the Truly Devious series, then you know this is the second book in the Truly Devious series. Everybody on BookTube raves about the, what's it called? Not The Vanishing Star, the Truly Devious series. There's so far 3 books in the series. I believe the author is coming out with a 4th one, but honestly, I was not really interested in this book. The first book I gave a 3 out of 5 stars, which was enough for me to want to keep reading it. Like, I wanted to find out what happened to the overarching storyline, like the overarching mystery, but this book just dragged on. I don't even know. There was like no clues, no interesting plot. I fell asleep while reading this, and I was listening to the audiobook while physically reading this. When I woke up, I was like, well, damn, I fell asleep for like an hour. Like, I missed like an hour of content. What am I gonna do? And that's when I realized that I didn't really care about missing that much content. I was like indifferent about it, and I decided to DNF this book. Yes, it is my first DNF of the year. I got maybe 200 pages in. 200 pages with that hour of falling asleep. And it just wasn't doing it for me. It wasn't like interesting enough. It wasn't holding my attention well enough for me to consider like continuing or even just like rereading what I had missed. If you don't know what this is about, basically the first book is about Stevie, who goes to this boarding school for like gifted children, and at this boarding school there's this mystery that everybody knows about from the 1930s, where the owners, or the founders, I guess is a better word, the founder, his family, his wife and daughter go missing. They find the wife's body, but they don't find the daughter's body, and he gets this like ransom letter from someone who calls himself Truly Devious, which is where they get the name Truly Devious from. And so Stevie in the present day tries to figure out the mystery of what happened to the daughter who killed the wife, like who is Truly Devious. And I heard that that mystery goes unsolved for all 3 books. If that's a spoiler for you, sorry. I guess they eventually solve it in the 3rd book. I don't know, but like they drag that mystery on over throughout all 3 books. And then there's a second mystery that is kind of a spoiler, so I'm not going to talk about it, but there's a second mystery that I thought was solved in the 1st book, but then they drag it out into the 2nd book, and in the 2nd book they're still trying to figure out the second mystery. And I'm like, is that all this is? Like, they're just dragging out these mysteries. I wanted more thrilling content, not this. Not what I got. So that is why I DNF'd this book. That is a long explanation for why I DNF'd this book. So if you like the series, sorry, it just wasn't hitting it for me. It just wasn't. Alright, so I adjusted the camera angle a little bit so you're a little lower. Anyways, unimportant. The next book I have to show you is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. So this is the same author as Grown. I loved Grown so much that I decided to pick up one of her other books from Barnes & Noble. And can we just talk about how floppy this is? Like, it passes a flop test with flying colors. Anyways, this book is about Claudia and her best friend Monday. Claudia she starts like 8th grade, that's the grade before high school, right? She starts 8th grade and she realizes that her best friend, Monday, is missing. Like, nobody's heard from Monday all summer, and nobody's seen her all summer. Nobody knows where she is. She asks around and like nobody is giving her a straight answer. So she's trying to figure out the mystery of what happened to her best friend, Monday. All while dealing with, you know, typical 8th grade stuff like bullies and just all the drama that everyone goes through in 8th grade and middle school, you know, wanting to fit in and like all this stuff. And yeah, so that's basically what this book is about. I really love this book. I know that was like a very short synopsis, but she's just looking for her friend Monday and nobody can find her. And not even the police are getting involved. It's really confusing as to why nobody, not even Monday's siblings, can answer her like where she is. And it follows a couple different timelines. There's like the before and the after and a year before the before. So you get a lot of different perspectives into their relationship and into what Claudia is going through and the lengths she's willing to go through to find her best friend. It's really not a fun novel, but it was very thrilling, and I don't know how to describe it, but I had a really fun time reading this book. And it was really interesting to see Claudia like going through, I can't explain it without giving spoilers, but I don't want to give spoilers, but all the things that she goes through in order to find her friend and all the things she's going through just in middle school, being alone basically, because Monday and her were like in their own little bubble of just them together. And now that Monday's gone, it's like Claudia's out there fending for herself, and it's like a learning experience for her. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So if that synopsis compels you to want to read this book, I highly suggest it. Or if you really enjoyed Grown and you want to try out Tiffany D. Jackson's other works, I highly recommend you try out Monday's Not Coming. The next book is a thriller slash memoir. I don't know. People were calling this like a horror slash thriller, but I wasn't really scared by it. It's In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This is about Carmen going through an abusive relationship, basically. A lesbian abusive relationship, which is not a perspective that we really see a lot of in not just fiction, but just like literary works. So I was really intrigued to read this. It's a very short book. It's only, let's see, it's like 245 pages, I think. Something like that. 245 pages, yep. So it's a really short book. I got through this in like a couple days, maybe 2 days at most. But, or 2 days at least, I think is what I meant to say. But I really enjoyed my time reading this book. I was, in a sense, on the edge of my seat about it because I really wanted to see what would happen with Carmen and her partner that she was like in this abusive relationship with. It wasn't like a thriller type of on the edge of my seat, if you know what I mean. If you get what I'm saying, then if you know, you know. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really compelling, just all the struggles that she went through and her describing the type of abuse that she was going through. It's not something that, like I said, is really talked about in the LGBTQ community. You mostly hear stories of women being abused by men, but women on women abuse is a thing. It's very prevalent and it needs to be talked about more. So I thought this brought up a lot of good points about that. And yeah, if you are looking for a book like that, if you're looking to read a good memoir, if you want to hear more queer stories, then I highly recommend you read In the Dream House. The next book I read is another really short book. It's Elevation by Stephen King. I'm gonna be honest, I originally picked this up from the library and decided not to read it, but then I was like, well, since I have it, might as well read it. So Elevation is about this man, I forget his name, Scott Carey, who this weird phenomenon is happening to him. He is losing weight without physically changing anything. Like, he looks the same as he did when he weighed like 270, but he's losing weight. So his physical appearance isn't changing, but he's losing weight. That's a good way to describe it. And he could be holding like 20-pound weights on the scale, and the scale will say the same thing as when he's standing like butt naked, you know? So this weird phenomenon is happening. He goes to his doctor about it, and the doctor doesn't know like what he's talking about, like what is happening. He has no explanation for it. And basically this was like a little novella. Like, it's not really like a huge book. It is 146 pages long. But basically, this story is a story about coming together, bringing people together. Scott's neighbors are this lesbian couple, or is this lesbian couple, and nobody in the town likes them. Like, they steer clear of the lesbians in the neighborhood, which is like kind of fucked up. But Scott kind of, through his affliction, I guess you could call it, kind of brings them and the town together, and that's what this novella is about. So I enjoyed it. It wasn't a bad story. It wasn't the greatest Stephen King I've read. It wasn't bad. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't terrible. I enjoyed it. It kept me captivated for the 2 days that it took me to read it, because it's less than 200 pages long. It wasn't the greatest short story novella that I have ever read, if that makes sense. So yeah. The next book that I have to share with you, sorry, I was looking at my Goodreads because that's where I have all my ratings. Also, speaking of Goodreads, I will have my Goodreads linked down below, along with my Instagram. If you care to follow me, if you care to keep up with what I'm reading, it'll be there. But this book is The Death of Viktor Og by Akwaeke Emezi. I'm definitely pronouncing that first name wrong. I will have it here in text for you so you can read it yourselves. Akwaeke Emezi, I think is how you pronounce it. But The Death of Viktor Og is about, obviously, the death of Viktor Og. He dies in the first chapter, so it's not a spoiler or anything, that's the synopsis. But you kind of follow along his life story, as well as his mother's search for answers as to how he died, because he just mysteriously dies and nobody knows what happened to him. And it's just about his life, and it was honestly so interesting. I have never read a book with so many like plot twists at the end. Like, it was so good. I am gonna be honest, I was not in the mood to read that much, but this book made me want to read. So it was that good. And it's really short too. The last couple books that I read this month were really, really short. This one was only 243 pages long. No, 245 pages long. And I loved every second of reading this. Noelle here on YouTube, she said that this made her cry. It personally didn't make me cry, but I still really enjoyed reading this book. And I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Now, to lift up this pile of books. So here are all the books that I read this month, including the one that I DNF'd. Yes, I'm including this in this pile. But yeah, it was a solid stack. I didn't read as many pages as I read in January. In January, I read over 3,000 pages, and in February, I didn't even hit 2,000 pages. I got to like 1950 because the last like 3 books were hella short. I had a fun time reading this month. I read another 8 books this month, which was pretty surprising because February is shorter than January, and also February I was like dealing with not full-time classes, I'm going part-time, but part-time classes for the entire month, while January I only had classes for like 1 week of that month. You feel me? So like, yes. I don't know. If you want to follow me on my Instagram and my Goodreads, they'll be down below, like I said earlier. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like this video if you enjoyed it. Leave any video suggestions you have in the comments down below. And leave me some books that you read in February. If you read only 1 book, if you read like 15 books, I don't know. There's this girl that I follow, Haley in Bookland. She read like, how many? She read like 19 books this month. I'm like, how did you read so many books? How did you have the time? Yeah. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.